Welcome back to a chapter day. Happy Sabbath. Today we are going to be reading 1 Chronicles chapter 11. Yesterday we had a short reading on chapter 10 about the recount of Saul's death, he and his sons, and how the people of the Philistines, I believe, took their bodies and decapitated them and hung them up. And some brave Israelites from, I believe it's Gileadites or Gideon, they went and got their bodies, and the Gileadites took their bodies down and buried them respectfully. So, and then the kingdom from Saul was handed over to David, because remember, Saul had strayed from God. He was doing things that he should not have done. He disobeyed, first of all, and instead of eradicating all of the cattle and ox and sheep and everything that he got from one of their raids on one of those pagan cities, he took it and said that the people wanted it for sacrifice, when he knew he could have stopped that if that was the truth. And then he went to the witch to ask the witch what was going to take place with him, and he went to battle with the Philistines next day, and of course he was killed. Okay, so God had stopped having any connections with Saul. And sometimes, you know, we need to know when we are no longer in God's favor. If we know we are not doing right, we need to constantly check ourselves. Okay, so chapter 11, let's see what we encountered today. Then all Israel gathered themselves to David unto Hebron, saying, Behold, we are thy bone and thy flesh. And moreover, in time past, even when Saul was king, thou was he that leddest out and broughtest in Israel. And the Lord thy God said unto thee, Thou shalt feed my people Israel, and thou shalt be ruler over my people Israel. Therefore came all the elders of Israel to the king to Hebron, and David made a covenant with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel, according to the word of the Lord by Samuel. And David and all Israel went to Jerusalem, which is Jebus, where the Jebusites were, the inhabitants of the land. And the inhabitants of Jebus said unto David, Thou shalt not come hither. Nevertheless, David took the castle of Zion, which is the city of David. So David was not accepted by all the Israelites. Judah, for one, accepted him. He was of the tribe of Judah. Some of the other Israelites did, but others refused to have him as their king. Later on, that was changed. God had allowed him to have all of the tribes following him. Then when he went to get the city of Jerusalem, which was going to be where he would set up his place after he left Hebron, there were people dwelling there, Jebusites. I guess they were not of the people of Israel, and David got rid of them, and he set up his city, which was called the city of David. Okay, verse 6. And we have read all of this before. Okay, this is just a recount they're giving us here in 1 Chronicles. And David said, Whosoever smiteth the Jebusites first shall be chief and captain. So Joab the son of Zeruiah went first up and was chief. And David dwelt in the castle, therefore they called it the city of David. And he built the city round about, even from Millo round about, and Joab repaired the rest of the city. So David waxed greater and greater, for the Lord of hosts was with him. These also are the chief of the mighty men whom David had, who strengthened themselves with him in his kingdom, and with all Israel, to make him king, according to the word of the Lord concerning Israel. Now that's a good way to know if we are in God's favor. And I know sometimes they say, you know, you can't just judge by how well things go. And if things are going too well with you, maybe you're not in God's favor. You know, I don't know. If you know you're walking with God, you know really, you don't know you're walking with God? You know how you interact with God every day, how you talk with God, you meditate, you bring all your situations before God. It says it's David waxed greater and greater, for the Lord of hosts was with him. God was with him. David knew how he was interacting with God. David was not a perfect man like no one on the face of this earth is, but he knew how he had a relationship with God, and we have to know the same thing today. Know your relationship with God. Verse 11. And this is the number of the mighty men whom David had, Jashobeam and Hachmonite, the chief of the captains, he lifted up his spear against 300 slain by him at one time. Can you imagine one man slaying 300? Mercy. Verse 12, and after him was Eleazar the son of Dodo the Ahohite, who was one of the three mighties. I'm thinking the three mighties, let's hear it, because so far I've heard of Joab, and now I'm hearing of Jashobeam, so maybe there's another one that'll make up the three. Verse 13, he was with David at Pasdamim, and there the Philistines were gathered together to battle, where was a parcel of ground full of barley, and the people fled from before the Philistines. And they set themselves in the midst of that parcel and delivered it, and slew the Philistines, and the Lord saved them by a great deliverance. Now 3 of the 30 captains went down to the rock to David, into the cave of Adullam. Remember, David was hiding in caves from Saul, okay? From caves to palace. Yeah, man, I'm saying. And the host of the Philistines encamped in the valley of Rephidim. And the Philistines were after him too, because now they know that he's like open game. Saul is the same king that he killed Goliath for, is now trying to kill him. So, you know, you ever notice when you kick a man when he's down? Yeah, that's what the Philistines were really doing. Oh, he's in a bad way now. And not just the Philistines, a lot of enemies came up after David. But if you read Psalms, or when we get to the book of Psalms, you will hear David is constantly crying out to God because of the enemies round about. And it was not just the Philistines. Okay, verse 16. And David was then in the hold, and the Philistine garrison was then at Bethlehem. And David longed and said, oh, that one would give me drink of the water of the well of Bethlehem that is at the gate. And Bethlehem was an Israelite city, okay? Oh, I'm not sure if it was yet conquered, but anyway, the Philistines were occupying it, and David would have liked to get drink from it. So I guess it was maybe an Israelite city already, and the Philistines had taken over. Verse 18, and the 3 break. Now, the 3 I'm going to say, I would say, is Joab, Eleazar, and Jashobeam. I have never heard of Jashobeam. I've heard of Joab. He was David's captain for quite some time. I think all the way through until David's death. Okay, only when Solomon came in, that's when Solomon had Joab killed, because he had kind of betrayed David with Adonijah, his son, David's son, who wanted to get the throne before David died and before Solomon was given the throne. So David had warned Solomon to watch out for Joab. He might be he was a traitor. Okay, so he was killed then. But Joab was one, because he was the first one mentioned in this chapter. Then Jashobeam, never heard of him. And then Eleazar, I heard of him. Okay, so they were the 3 mighties, like they said. Okay, so those 3 break through the host of the Philistines and drew water out of the well of Bethlehem that was by the gate, and took it and brought it to David. But David would not drink of it, but poured it out to the Lord. I'm always saying for this, when I read this in first or 2 Kings, I was like, David, why would you do that? These men wanted to show you how dedicated they were to you, and they risked their lives and went to Bethlehem where Philistines were, you know, and they were the enemies fighting them at that time. They could have been killed to get you water, because they heard you say you would have loved to get water from Bethlehem. And when you got it, what did you do? You pour it out to the Lord, as you said. I mean, really? To me, that was so disheartening. But verse 19, and said, my God forbid it me that I should do this thing. Shall I drink the blood of these men that have put their lives in jeopardy? For with the jeopardy of their lives they brought it. Therefore he would not drink it. These things did these 3 mightiest. So again, I'm thinking the 3 mightiest were the 3 ones that were mentioned first: Joab, Jashobeam, and Eleazar. Okay, going on, verse 20. And Abishai, the brother of Joab, he was the chief of the 3. For lifting up his spear against 300, he slew them, and had a name among the 3. Of the 3, he was more honorable than the 2, for he was their captain. Howbeit, he attained not to the first three. Okay, so I'm thinking they're saying he was more honorable than two of the first three men, but he did not attain, or he was not counted as most valiant like the first three men. That's my interpretation of this verse, okay? If you have another one, feel free to let me know. Verse 22. Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man of Kabzeel, who had done many acts, he slew 2 lion-like men of Moab. Also, he went down and slew a lion in a pit in a snowy day. Oh my gosh. When you slay a lion, I mean, who today can you see stand up to a lion? Have you seen a lion? And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Back in early days, these are like, to me, the closest to creation days. I always call them that, even though there might have been hundreds of years in between creation and whatever. But these animals and people were so much more massive than us. Of more substance, I would say. Everything must have been of more substance than we are today. The men, women, everyone must not have been looking like us. We have depleted in stature. I believe we have. But to go down and slay a lion in a pit, I don't even know why he did that. But on a snowy day too. I don't know. I just love to read Bible stories. It just sets your mind, just like any other story you read. But these are real accounts. People who say the Bible isn't real, I don't know what you want to hear. But if you want to watch television and think Captain, what's his name, can zoom across the sky and save whoever, the world, and the world is just always where they are. That's not the world. But anyway, amazing stories. These must have been massive men. You did not want to contend with them, and there were no guns involved, okay? This was hand-to-hand battle. All right, verse 23. And he slew an Egyptian, a man of great stature, 5 cubits high, and in the Egyptian's hand was a spear like a weaver's beam. Now, a spear is usually like about 3 inches wide in diameter, I think, but a weaver's beam, I think, I'm picturing a weaver's beam is where, you know, that thing that they weave threads on, and it's big. It's not a little thing. For your spear to be that big, that's the Egyptian spear they're describing. And he went down to him with a staff and plucked the spear out of the Egyptian's hand and slew him with his own spear. So he had a stick, that's a staff, took the spear out of the Egyptian's hand and slay him. You see, these men, David was the same. Where did they get that valor? It was from God. These people were with God. Verse 21. These things did Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and had the name among the 3 mighties. Behold, he was honorable among the 30, but attained not to the first 3, and David set him over his God. Again, they always go back to the first 3, and like I said, I'm thinking it's those first 3 men that were mentioned in the chapter. And verse 26, also the valiant men of the armies were Asahel, the brother of Joab. We heard of Asahel. He was killed by, I can't remember. He was one of the men that worked for Saul. And he was chasing after him, and he turned around and killed him. Abner, that was his name. He was killed by Abner, who was Saul's captain. Okay? And later on, Joab and the other brother, Abishai, killed Abner for killing their brother Asahel. And David was upset with them because I guess he had a liking for Abner from before when he lived in Saul's palace. I don't know, but I thought Abner got his just deserve. Okay, so they're mentioning the other one. So Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan, the son of Dodo of Bethlehem. So he was brother to Eleazar, who was also the son of Dodo. Oh my gosh. Okay. So that's it for recounting. And now they're going into a listing of more valiant men. So from verse 27 to 47, they have a list of men that fought with David. Because remember, when we read about David prior, we only heard certain names like Joab, Abishai, Asahel, Eleazar, and we didn't really hear everybody's name. So this is what they're doing. They're trying to get all the information in more details for us, for David's men. So they were all valiant men, but they just named the ones who did some really notable things in the first part. So in those verses from 27 to 47, verse 41 mentions Uriah the Hittite. Remember him? He was the husband of Bathsheba, whom David committed adultery with, and then had her husband killed after she got pregnant. Remember that awful episode that set his whole house in disarray because of his wrongdoing. God does not condone wrongdoing. So when we think we're getting away with it, au contraire. And those were the men. He had amazing men fighting with him. You can't have, you know, men fighting for you who aren't valiant. They have to be bold and brave. I like bold people, but you know, I would tell you. Anyway, I think boldness is good if you have it contained in God. I would love to be bold in God, be bold in Christ. So that's the end of the reading for 1 Chronicles chapter 11. And thank you all once again for listening. Remember, hey, I forgot to mention, today's the first day of a new month, February. Yay! My birthday's going to be this month. So I always like February. I think some of the most renowned people were born in the month of February and also in the year that I was born. Okay, so with that said, I hope you have a great week ahead. This is a day of rest. Again, I say happy Sabbath to you. Happy first of the month of February. And all the best for the week ahead. That will start tomorrow. Or as most of us practice, at the end of our Sabbath, the new day begins. Sunset to sunset. Evening and morning, first day. We don't live it, but that's how we keep the Sabbath. Okay, so until then, have a wonderful day. And remember, faith comes by hearing God's word. So keep on listening. Take care.